Nick, I think you saw Babygirl as well.
I saw it. I loved it.
I loved it too, and I'm so glad that you loved it because there are definitely people that do not love it.
Yeah, what is that? What is the thing what do they say that they don't like? Do you remember?
I think there was kind of like smaller comments about certain parts not being believable, like um, not believing that he would be quite so forward with her right away in the office space.
Mm.
Um, but I think they do kind of allude to that later, where he says something about he's like super in tune with people or something. It's something about him that kind of scares him about himself. So I feel like they wrapped that up. Anyway, I went for it. I loved the whole movie. I think the other thing was like somebody was like those kids were way too young to be Nicole Kidman's kids, things like that. I think people just, I would imagine to some degree, it caused a little bit of inner turmoil or discomfort for some people.
Yeah. Yeah. It might be that sort of deeper discomfort than like sort of latching on to these smaller details, right? But who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's dive in because it's such a it ties into things we've written about kink, and it's a topic that we are exploring more and more. So like spoiler alert, first of all, if you haven't seen the movie, probably go see it. If you have any interest in kink, something that you're thinking about exploring, I do think it's a really good movie for intro to kink.
I think so
Mm.
too. And I think that, you know, you wrote an article going back into this about, how kinks can bring up shame. And, this is all, what is the psychological implications of a certain desire for something kind of kinky? And I really also want to talk about how, like, there's the actual feeling and desire, there's the like the want of something, and then there's the layer of judgment that we put on top of it, right? And
Mhm.
so you really see that in the movie, and that's what I thought they did so well.
Yeah,
um I mean,
yeah.
it's really about her awakening to allowing herself to have her genuine feeling, and found the avenue in which she felt like she could have it sort of secretly, right? So the affair is really about kind of being able to experience this thing um,
Mm.
away from her normal self, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess it brings up two different kind of points about kink and getting into kink. One is that, what you were saying, there's like the desire and then there's the layer of like shame and judgment. But like actually that is not something that you're just trying to get rid of in kink. It's actually like sort of the point is that you're doing something that transgresses and actually steps into shame in a way that actually like enlivens the experience, right? Like it makes it even hotter because there is an element of like we're doing something
Right.
wrong or bad. So it's like it's a way that people use to like actually be with and like work through shame instead of like pretending that it's not there, which can be so powerful when when you view your sexuality as not just like these kind of pure desires, but then also how they're mixed in with shame and guilt and all these other feelings. And actually, like when you accept that complete picture, it creates a hotter experience, not like a more shut down experience. If you're more disembodied about the shame, then it can come in and just kind of like shut things down. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And it's kind of also describing one who has a little bit made peace and found some comfort in this dual experience, right?
Hmm.
Um, and one who has not yet.
Mm.
So the shame piece, like if you're not comfortable and you haven't kind of made friends with
Mm.
this interest of yours, then it's just sort of like, oof, I've got this like fetish and I can't tell anyone about it. And I can't, it's just a years alone. It can be super isolating, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think the movie tells the progression really well of going from what you just said to what we were talking about right before that, like embodied kink versus like disembodied kink. So I think when she first realizes that she has this interest, I mean, not first realizes, but first really kind of makes it conscious and engage and starts engaging with it. It's pretty disembodied. Like she's really, really afraid to like tap into this part of herself. And so it feels like it needs to happen like completely outside of her life
Yeah.
and in secret. And then I think, spoiler alert, over the course of the movie and with his help, like kind of normalizing the desire and leading her to the pleasure of like working in these parts of herself,
Yeah.
she arrives at a place of like being able to incorporate the kink into her life with her husband, with boundaries, like with agreements in place, with like in their bedroom, which actually I think is sort of like one of the goals of kink, not to like come to some sort of conventional bedroom setting with your primary partner, but to be able to do it in a way that feels like within your window, with ideally with somebody that you trust that can go there with you. But at
Hmm.
the end of the day, know they're not going to like actually hurt you or actually do something bad to you because you have that trust built up.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, I
Mhm.
know it's a little bit of it's a layered concept, but you talk about like a key part is this traversing the shame and right. But
Mhm.
now what you're talking about is that all of that is done under an umbrella of sort of safety, like a larger, like, when you talk about like bringing it home and exploring it with your partner and like
Mhm.
you're bringing it all the way in. And I am sure that sometimes that process of bringing it into your everyday life
Mhm.
can, I don't, it's probably not so easy sometimes, right? For lots of reasons.
Yeah, yeah, I can take away the more primal thrill of it, and that's like a really hard negotiation with self. And I think, at least in the sex therapy course that I'm taking, it's like they give the advice that you just kind of like try to distill like our fantasies are sort of have a metaphorical, symbolic element to them. Like there's the literal thing of what do I actually want to do, but then there's also a symbolic element to that of like loss of control or humiliation or whatever it is that like is your kink. And so can you like distill down, okay, what is the actual like hottest part of this
Mm.
symbolically or energetically or emotionally or sexually, whatever it is, and um how can I access like the best possible version of that while keeping myself somewhat, safe, or in like some sort of trusted container. So it is like a little bit of a negotiation. Like you might not get the absolute hottest version, but you can get pretty close. This is what sex therapy, I think, is
Yeah.
great for. You can sort of recognize and accept, okay, this is what I really want, and how can I set that up within this container. Like it could even be your partner like pretending to be a stranger, like or something like that. Or it could be somebody else that you both know coming into the scene. Like there's a negotiation there, and it takes time. And I think that movie does a really good job of sort of illustrating that negotiation a bit.
Yeah. And I thought um, another comment that I heard was that uh, she was like in the story, she's not really punished for her work transgression. I didn't necessarily agree with that. I thought there was that intense scene where her assistant person comes into the kitchen. I mean, it's so intense and really kind of says like this is what's going to go down. Like you're going to promote me, like do whatever. But I also thought, it was a female director, which I thought showed throughout the movie, that she actually let this person have this experience, have this kind of self deepening experience without just totally fucking punishing her,
Mhm.
bringing and allowing her to bring it back into her marriage and, figure some shit out, right?
Yeah, like a happy kink ending. She does.
But
She comes right up to the edge of engaging it in such a way that would destroy her whole life, right? Like The one line that I really stuck with me was when she was trying to explain it to her husband and she hadn't embodied it yet. And she said something like, I don't want to use a fucking safe word. I don't want it has to, the stakes have to be real, and like, I think if she carried that mentality through, I think she would have lost everything. Um, but she is able,
Yeah.
probably when her partner and the guy like kind of come together and there's this integration scene, I think she's able to turn that corner of like, oh no, I need to engage with this in a way that, keeps me safe.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And
Mm.
can I just say also, I thought due to it being a female director, first of all, I thought the scenes were so incredibly hot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but I think what made them hot and what made them so intimate is that they were so far from being picture perfect. They were
Hmm.
kind of, there was sort of an animal quality. There was awkwardness. There was tension.
Yeah.
There was almost like in conventional male-directed films, there's this kind of smooth, this is
Hmm.
how it goes, and it's so fast. And she's like up on the kitchen counter, and bam, she's having an orgasm, and it's like what is that? It's like this film, right? Which doesn't really hold true very much in real life at all. And so I loved the kind of, it's like the
Mm.
Nicole, is that the name of the director? I'm sorry, I forgot. But she slows things down
Yeah.
in a way that as a female, I'm like, yeah, can we just slow this down and really be in that space, right?
Oof. That's such an accurate point, and it brings up so much for me about like seeing gay men in therapy and my own experience of like jumping into sex as a gay man and like joining that community. It's like there is kind of a lot of like jumping to being into something or just like going full into the kink and it can be really bypassy of all these like really vulnerable, like that's what I loved about the scene, the first scene where they're really together in a BDSM type of way is like she's really struggling to let go of that control
Yeah.
and it's really awkward and I think that that's a good lesson for, yeah, I mean, queer people, but everybody who is like getting into this world of kink is like to allow the vulnerability into it instead of just bypassing to like, oh, I'm gonna be kinky. I'm gonna be, I'm gonna be a sub or I'm gonna be a pup or whatever it is, I'm gonna be a dom, and not really like being with your felt experience of what that's like and what you're giving up and how scary that can be.
Yeah.
And yeah, like the telling through a woman's perspective just seems so like it feels healing. It felt healing to me just because I feel
Mhm.
like it always feels very bypassy of like, oh, I'm just gonna go for it. I'm just gonna go for it, which is a mistake we make so often, I think.
Yeah, it's sort of like it's kind of like it's almost like a race, and the finish line is everything.
Yeah.
And you know, I think that idea in itself just kills sex, right? It's just all right, or maybe you can sort of get off or whatever, and it's okay. An orgasm is great, but it's kind of like if you keep that kind of unknown quality, it's like you're just more alive in the moment. How can I just like get back into my body like right in this moment? What do I actually feel right now? Oh, I'm
Mhm.
just like really loving just sitting in front of you and looking at you, or whatever the thing is. I thought it was really healing too. I loved it. I'm so glad that you loved it because if you didn't, we would have to just break up our business partnership.
Be a big fight for sure.